studio audience tonight, just sitting just off camera, is one of the many mascots of the show, but she chooses to remain anonymous. But I am, as always, joined by the talent, the myth, the legend, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I am fine and dandy. Coming into winter here in Melbourne. It's a wet night here. I assume it's a little bit rainy out your side of town as well.
I'm not looking. I'm choosing for reality to be what I want it to be, so I'm not looking outside. But it was definitely raining this morning.
It was indeed, and I can hear this hasn't rained a lot since I've lived in this house. I can hear dripping in this room here somewhere, I think, but I can't find it. So, needless to say, that it's a lot less stressful when the roof is dripping and you don't own the property because, it's not
jokes on you. It's actually just the social experiment that Michelle's running on you. She's just got the sound of dripping somewhere. Slowly insane.
The telltale heart or something. That, real estate themes. It's on point. Got a cracking show, I think, this week.
Yeah, we've got quite a big one. We've got some big releases. We've got a big chain movie, which is cleverly chosen by my co-host here, which they're following on from Eli Roth in Piranha 3D from last time. We have gone into the somewhat legendary 2-for-1 Grindhouse. Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, written and directed, homage to the Grindhouse genre, as well as the biggest movie of the year, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and followed up with nice cheerful little ditty, The Boston Strangler.
Should we get cracking onto get straight into action then?
Let's get into
desperately waiting in bated breath to hear what we think about a 15-year-old film.
It's scary to say that word. 16 years.
16 years, actually. So
16, that's even worse.
15 here in Australia, because Anyway, we are talking, of course, about the 2007 double feature, Grindhouse.
Yeah.
And did you get to see this in the cinema?
I did, yeah. This came out. I'm pretty sure it actually came out the year before I started working for the UGC Cinema in West India Quay. And I remember going to watch it. I had the unlimited cinema pass, and I went to 368 movies in a year. And this was one of the double feature ones because they had a special evening presentation of the extended version with the fake trailers in the middle and everything like that. So it was a great time.
It never got released in Australia. Not a proper release. The film, it failed in the US.
Yes, it did.
As I recall. People apparently would walk out of a cinema after Planet Terror because they didn't realize that they were seeing a double feature and had to put up signs and stuff. But no one went and saw it in the US as a double feature. And a 3-hour film in 2007 was a bit long. These days, it's a fucking walk
it's half of the course, yeah.
But so they in territories like Australia, they just decided to split it into 2 separate films and release them that way. Again, without a great deal of fanfare either. So it has played at the Astor here in Melbourne, which is a repertoire cinema. They've played the actual original version a few times, but I've never had a chance to be there and see it. So I've only seen it on television. Now I watched the full version, the one end-to-end version, whereas I think you watched the film separately, which is on Stan. Yes. I had a quick poke around at Stan, and I think you've got pretty much everything in those films. Anyway, you get the fake trailers at the start of Death Proof and stuff like that anyway. So I don't think there's a massive difference. You just split over 2.
Yeah. They just kind of fine-tuned it. Went, all right, let's just split it and make it more palatable, which makes sense, I guess.
I did notice, actually, with Death Proof, which is the second film of the 2.
Yes.
The credits are for both films, even on Stan. So it's a pretty clumsy, we'll just cut it in half.
It's kind of fitting for the Grindhouse nature of it, though.
So technicalities aside, what is this thing? As I said, it's a double feature. It is Planet Terror, written and directed by Robert Rodriguez. He, of course, of Spy Kids 3D.
Starting with with his most
best known work.
yeah.
Alita Battle Angel, Desperado, Once Upon a Mexico, From
Sin
Dusk Till
City.
Dawn, Sin City. Don't mention the sequel. Um, then of course we've also got Death Proof, which is the first chain film Quentin Tarantino directed, who of course.
It is true.
Again, I always declare my biases. I am a bit of a Tarantino fanboy. Planet Terror is, I guess, Rodriguez's take on a zombie film. And Death Proof is what is it? It's kind of it's sort of a female revenge movie.
Well,
it's a road movie.
Yeah, it's kind of. I remember there was an interview with him, and he mentioned, I think it was Tarantino, he said something along the lines of Death Proof is a slasher movie. It just so happens that the knife in this movie is a car.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad, but it's interesting watching it after reading his book, and you can start to see elements of the things he talks about in his book, the films he loved and got taken to as a child, or as a young person, is really filtering through this film. It really is a love letter to the cinema that these guys grew up with.
Oh, 100%.
And it's full of really highly stylized flourishes. And I know what you're thinking. Highly stylized Tarantino? Are you fucking mad? No, I refuse to believe it. That's what you're thinking. He doesn't do it. Of course, he's known for being a very highly stylized filmmaker, but the stylized elements of this are more of a fact of they've literally scratched the film, if they use film. I kind of guessing Rodriguez used a digital camera because the man loves digital cinema. Quentin's more of a film simp. And they've got a scratched, grainy looking film. They've got the fake cheesy trailers made by all their friends. They've got the missing reels.
The burnout of the screen.
The bumpers, with a little cartoon cat turning into a panther, restricted, and the little jingle, feature presentation.
That's now just the staple of Tarantino.
So the first thing I thought of while I was watching this was when I saw this. I've only seen this once before, and that was back when it came shortly after it came out. And I thought to myself, "Fuck, this is so fucking cool!" Seeing they're doing all this shit, they said all the sort of little elements to make it look grindhousey. 15, 16 years later, you're like, it's a bit much, guys. It's a bit much. What did you make of all that stylized stuff to make it look like a grindhouse?
It was nice for a moment, but then it just grates on you, and it feels like I don't know if it is a psychosomatic thing or not, but particularly with Planet Terror, it felt like the quality of the image got worse as the movie went on. It's like, okay, I get what you're doing, but that doesn't necessarily make it good. You're doing something that is very much in keeping with sort of like those old dusty videotapes. Yes, young kids movies came on VHS tapes, and they got damaged ridiculously easily, and you'd have those weird kind of flickerings and the bad edits that for the sort of like home release, and things would be cut out, or you'd suddenly see from one camera angle to another, and they'd repeat the same line because of where they were cutting it, and it wasn't a professional job and things like that. But yeah, that was a quirk of the time, but we've kind of progressed on from that. And Grindhouse, to me, doesn't have to be those shoddy edit works or poor cinema, poor screen quality or anything like that. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't go full boogie and go, all right, you know what, we're going to do it 4:9 and then maybe stretch it out or something like that, or have a scene where, much like if you watch the wide angle version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer for the first season or two, it's not made for widescreen, and you can actually see sort of like the building of the set on either sides of some of the screenshots and things. That would have kind of made a little bit of sense if they were really going all in, but it was all fascia stuff, and it did grate and drain by the end of the movie. It's like, okay, yep, enough with the squigglies, please.
And I also felt, to sort of go along the same lines that you're talking about, while you felt Planet Terror look worse as it went along. I kind of got the impression that halfway through Death Proof, they forgot about all of that shit, and they just stopped doing it. Like, the production values of the second half of Death Proof are actually perfectly fine, quite good, the production values without all the scratchy film effects and missing real bullshit. I mean, that was in the first half more. And the second half of the film is just like a normal Tarantino film you would go and see that wasn't made to ape, grindhouse cinema in its look, at least. And I was like, did we just sort of throw that idea away halfway through, or?
It was a weird sensation, and we'll go into it more in detail. But Death Proof does very much feel like a movie of two parts, because you've got a long introduction to Stuntman Mike and who he is, and that he's the killer, and then it cuts to a different scenario, and again, it takes a long time for Stuntman Mike to appear, and that one, he's not as successful in what he's trying to do, to the point where it just becomes like three crazy women chasing down a redneck. And it is rather satisfying, but it's like, okay, did we really need the first half of this movie? Because that was satisfying.
We'll start with Planet Terror. Now, I guess a couple of things out of the way here from my perspective, just to be clear up front. I think Planet Terror is the better of the two. At least I thought so when I saw it the first time, and I still hold to that. And I think Death Proof might be the worst thing that Quentin Tarantino's ever done. And I think he admits it might be the worst thing he's ever done. That's, at least I know, again, fanboy hat on, it's not a terrible film. So saying it's the worst thing he's ever done is actually damning him with faint praise, in the sense that it's really not bad. It's just not as good as a lot of the other things. This or Hateful Eight, I'm not quite sure. But I think this. It's not up to most of his standard of most of his work, at least in my opinion, and that can be debated for a long time. But Planet Terror, after an experimental bioweapon is released, turning thousands into zombie-like creatures, up to a ragtag group of survivors to stop the infected and those behind its release. Stars here are Rose McGowan, Freddie Rodriguez as Ray. That was a strange casting choice, because there's so many people in this who are like gone on to bigger and better things, and he's just Freddie Rodriguez. Everyone. Josh Brolin in here as Dr. William Block, Marley Shelton, who was in Sin City as Dakota Block, the world famous, the iconic Michael Biehn, Sheriff Haig, Bruce Willis in a Blink and You'll Miss Him cameo.
Pretty much,
Which I think was the idea of, I read the idea was that they would, in grindhouse films, they'd hire the big star, shoot 5 minutes of footage with them, so that's all they could afford. Yeah. And then not have him actually in the scenes of any of the other actors, but just, they can have a big,
we've got him for 6 close-ups and that's it.
And then you could put him on the poster and people would come and see it and they're not realizing it, they're gone in 5 minutes. Naveen Andrews might be a familiar face for those who remember Lost. I'm sorry if you remember Lost. Fergie's very, very short acting career. And a few other familiar faces like Tom Savini in there as well. Straight up, bit of a disturbing situation at the start of this film, in the sense that it stars Rose McGowan, and it has been produced by the Weinstein Company.
Yeah.
Seeing the name Rose McGowan and Harvey Weinstein in the same credits, you're like, oh, that's a bit iffy. It makes you wonder what really happened behind the scenes of this one, because, we are, like, Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about.
And even because I think it was on this movie that Rose and Robert Rodriguez started their relationship, and that turned very sour as well, from the sounds of things. So it's like, this probably was an interesting work environment, and that's a very, very diplomatic way of putting challenging.
The shame is, I think Rose McGowan's actually really great in this film. She plays a go-go dancer named Cherry Darling, who is also maybe aspiring to be a stand-up comic. She is a friend from way back, Freddie Rodriguez, who plays Ray, comes back into her life on the same night as
El Rey.
the El Rey, being, of course, the fictional destination in From Dusk Till Dawn, if you were paying attention to that. As the same night that a deal for Bruce Willis is trying to buy this bioweapon, and it goes south, and it gets out and turns people into nasty, nasty zombies. There's attacks Rose McGowan, and they're forced to amputate her leg as a result of that, resulting in some very interesting improvised leg substitutes. At the same time, we have Marley Shelton's Dr. Dakota Block, who's having an affair with Fergie, of all people. Progressive.
No, that's a sister, wasn't it?
No, I thought they were having an affair.
I thought they were sisters, because there's that whole thing of what's his name? Josh Brolin's talking, and so like, oh, you haven't seen your sister in a while. I thought you didn't see her.
Your sister? Maybe I wasn't paying attention. I just assumed he was pissed off because she was having an affair. But either way, Josh Brolin's a nasty, nasty motherfucker in this film. So interestingly, this is the role that got him, in the end, indirectly, his role in No Country for Old Men.
I thought you were going to say the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, I mean, indirectly. I mean, I think maybe it was that role in No Country for Old Men that made him a star.
Yeah.
But apparently, they shot an audition tape for him, Quentin Tarantino. That's quite an audition tape that had Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
And Marley Shelton's actually, Dr. Dakota Block's got an interesting character here of her little hypodermic needles. And one of the more interesting sort of, I guess, sequences in the film is her after her husband basically numbs her arms while he's basically interrogating her, that she has to then try and escape from the zombies and get into a car without the use of her hands, which leads to one of the most horrific, cringy, I can't watch scenes in the film, which I won't spoil in case people want to see it. So after that, because it turns into your standard zombie fare, we have the standoff with the ragtag group of survivors in the barbecue place, the sheriff, etc. The random person getting bitten and dying. Where it gets really interesting is where they replace Cherry's leg with a machine gun.
I made you something.
And I thought the scenes of her with the machine gun were fucking badass. It's super, super cheesy. It makes no sense, but it's kind of badass. That's
the number one thing I think that really hits it for me with preferring this to Death Proof, in that this movie paints to the edges of its absurdity. And everything about it, every character is basically a stereotype that modern cinema is based off of. Like the badass female lead, the reluctant hero. Like El Rey could easily be swapped out for Snake Plissken or someone like that, because he's like, he doesn't say much, but he never misses. And it's like trashy lines and things like that. Everything about it is just stereotypical and a cliche to the point of everything is homage and disgusting, and it relishes in, we know what movie we're making here, we know what we're shooting for, and we are just doing that. And everything from like, oh, I'm sorry, I've got to take your balls, darling. It's just stupid lines like that, but they fit into this type of movie perfectly. Whereas and Death Proof is a different kind of animal.
I feel like maybe Rodriguez is a little bit more comfortable in this space than Tarantino in some ways, where, I mean, Tarantino over the years has shown he can do many different genres. Obviously, he's done Westerns, he's done, modern gangster films, kung fu films. But horror really hasn't been something he's gone near before or after this. I'll leave it up to the audience to decide whether this is horror. It has horror elements. And if he's, as you say, trying to make a slasher film, that's a bit new. Whereas Rodriguez had come earlier in his career, had done The Faculty, And apparently there's a story where he went and told some of his stars about the zombie films were going to make a comeback. But, got distracted and didn't make a zombie film until, this one, basically. After which, it had happened.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. This is just a fun movie. It's very gross.
Yeah.
So, and it goes that gross out factor. It really plays up that gross out factor.
I also like some of the comedy of the grossness, like the fact that Dr. William Block is paranoid about his own health, and he's got his thing, and you see that bit of like, "Ran, you don't see me chewing this, you know I'm stressed," and he sees the body and snaps, and then the mutant zombie thing, whatever they are, just purposefully just kind of smushes it like a child across the face of him just to infect him, and then just walks off, whereas every other mutant monster thing that we've seen has been just attack, devour. This one's like, no, this is personal. It just does the minimum amount to cause him the maximum amount of carnage. It's stupid, but it's great.
So the other thing that's probably notable in this one is the scene in the car with where Dakota Block's son, Tony Block. One of the more shocking segments of the film. I will not spoil it again. But that was actually that's Rebel Rodriguez, that's his son.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they managed to pull some fairly poignant moments in it's essentially a parody, really. Or is it a parody? Is it an homage? It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
And so it's really successful and has a couple of those oh fuck moments, and where you can't look at them. They're so, but also holy shit moments.
Yeah.
Along with the super gross out and ridiculousness going on at the same time.
Yeah.
So which I think he kind of hit the right balance of this. I mean, it's not a great zombie film, but I think he hit the brief.
Yeah. I think so. And I will also point out, I actually enjoyed Freddy Rodriguez as Ray in this, because he was not your usual kind of leading man kind of look. He certainly seems a little bit shorter compared to the other people around him, but he still carries himself quite well, and where they're still not willing to give him a gun, so he just has two butterfly knives, and he's just going through the hospital to get Cherry Darlin, and he's just slicing and stabbing and flipping around all over the place. It's shot well. It looks cool. He's moving well with it. He looks like almost like what I'd imagine a Mexican version of Wolverine could look like, with that sort of like smaller, stockier stature, just with knives and just jumping around where he needs to and just being very efficient with his killing. It was kind of cool. And the fact that they said, yep, you know what? We're just going to actually make you as damn cheesy as possible, like sitting on the waterbed with Cherry Darlin. So like, oh yeah, JT knows how to live. It's like, does he? But okay, that fits with your character. Everything, all the pieces just worked and collectively helped move this mess of blood and squibs just explode in the right direction from beginning to end.
Freddy, you're right. He's just fine with what he's actually fine. He's good. It's just a case of like, I've never heard of him. No, he's no relation to Robert, as far as I can tell. And when you see some of the names here, look through trivia, apparently Tom Everett Scott was considered for the role of Ray, and you're like, the fuck? But more interestingly, Robert Downey Jr. and Antonio Banderas were apparently considered for the role of El Rey. Now, either of those gentlemen, Banderas, of course, famously collaborated with Rodriguez in Desperado, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and there was another one in there. I can't think of it.
Well, there was
El Mariachi.
El Mariachi, but that didn't have Antonio Banderas.
Okay,
no.
But Banderas, a famous collaborator. But Robert Downey Jr. in 2007. That's the year before, I think, Iron Man. And what an interesting choice he might have been to have played El Rey.
Yeah.
who knows if it's true? But it is interesting that they picked someone who was pretty much, and I don't think I've ever heard of him before or since.
I only know him. He was also in The Lady in the Water, the very much maligned M. Night Shyamalan movie with Paul Giamatti and Bryce Dallas Howard. And I enjoy that movie for what it is. It's a really unusual movie, but it was kind of one of the first ones where there wasn't really a twist for a Shyamalan movie, and people said, "What? No, we
was
expect
a
twist."
The
The twist is there's no twist. Yes.
So should we move?
Let's move on to Death Proof.
Death Proof. So Death Proof. We'll just get the synopsis up for that one. Obviously, the big star in this one is Kurt Russell, who plays stuntman Mike. We have Zoe Bell playing Zoe Bell. Rosario Dawson. We have a big name in here. Mary Elizabeth Winstead in a small role, and Rose McGowan again. And of course, our link to last week, Eli Roth, who was also a producer on the film and made one of the fake trailers.
Yes.
Two separate sets of voluptuous women are stalked at different times by a scarred stuntman who uses his death-proof cars to execute his murderous plans. You made an excellent point with this is almost like two films sort of stitched together. And a film that kind of reminded me of a little bit, in a strange way, it was From Dusk Till Dawn. It wasn't anywhere near as good as that, let me say. But like, I remember I saw that when it first came out when I was like 19. And like, you're going along, it's a road movie. You've got, George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, and Harvey Keitel being cool. And then they get to the titty twister, and fucking
still love the name of that place.
And I just love Cheech Marin's speech out of it. Hot pussy, cold pussy, yellow pussy, smelly pussy, pussy for a Betty. If you find cheaper pussy anywhere, fuck it. It's a great film. But that all of a sudden, vampires, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
The road movie, which is very Tarantino-esque. Vampires? Not quite the tonal shift here, but in the sense that we meet our first set of voluptuous women, which is not a word I would have used to describe them.
No, I wouldn't either. They're definitely sexy and attractive, but when I think of voluptuous, I think very big, curvaceous bodies.
I think of the women who were in the film we watched last week. They were voluptuous.
Yeah, that's fair. Yep.
So we have Jungle Julia, played by Sidney Tamia Poitier, who is, of course, the daughter of Sidney Poitier, I think, or maybe a granddaughter, but she's related to Sidney Poitier. So Jungle Julia is a radio DJ. She and her friends are at a bar, a painfully hip bar in Texas or something. And they're having drinks. They're talking shit, and there at the bar is also Rose McGowan's Pam, who went to school with Jungle Julia and co. Do not get along. She ends up getting offered a ride home by stuntman Mike, Kurt Russell, who she meets at the bar. The bartender here, played by Quentin Tarantino, in one of his better roles, because he doesn't do much.
And he doesn't put on a terrible accent.
Small things. And in the process of giving her a ride home, basically kills her with his car. And I'm like, there are a number of problems here at this point in time. It's like, okay, it's a bit weird to get in a car and go home with someone you don't know for anybody, though that is, of course, Uber's business model. But especially for a single woman, I think most of them are cluey enough, probably would be a bit sus about that. I mean, the film doesn't really explain why all of a sudden she's okay. Also, when you see the car, it's basically says, "Oh, it's a movie car, baby," and like there's no seat, and he has to put like a metal seat to install. And there's no seat belts for the passenger side. And you're like, I didn't know anybody who would be okay with that. They'd be like, fucking get the fuck out of there, alarm would be going off in their head. But like, obviously the movie needs to happen, so she does, and he by breaking and throwing her around at high speed, he manages to kill Pam in a pretty gory scene.
Yeah, so the lead up to that I really liked. In he gets to the T junction, and so like, so left or right, and she says her decision. He goes, damn, that's a shame. And just how he explains sort of like, well, if you had been going in the same direction, it would have been a while before you started having to panic. And it's like, that's scary logic that makes sense. And I like that because it really added this massive extra level of creepy to this guy. Stuntman Mike very quickly presents himself as weird. The sort of like close-ups as he's eating the nachos and things like that. It's just uncomfortable, the grease and things like that. It's always, if you want someone to look disgusting and not trust them, you do close-ups of them eating and grease. They did it in Lord of the Rings with Lord Denethor eating the tomato and things like that. It's all gross. But then that just adds this whole level of predetermination for his character. So like, yep, as soon as I offered, this is what I was going to do. And you just made it a little bit more exciting for me because you scream. But then the actual brutality, it's horrible. The way that it's filmed, the look of it, and the final kind of look of her choking on her own blood and dying, it's very uncomfortable making. And I don't know.
I'm sure that's deliberate.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's quite right for the movie, because especially the kind of tone that they were going for, and it was very shocking. And Tarantino is known for that, so like playing in one style and then putting this shock in there. Like, prime example, the infamous car journey in Pulp Fiction where he accidentally shoots Marvin in the face. That was out of the blue, but it also still kind of played in the rest of the feel of the movie. This suddenly felt very, very different. And then the climax of this first half of the movie with the really cool music playing and then the car crash. It was a great kind of culmination. And then we get the second half of the movie, which is different again. It's unusual.
I think the good thing about the upside about the first half was it really yet again demonstrates what Quentin's best at, in my opinion, which is dialogue. And it's been there since day dot. That conversation around the table in the the opening scene of Reservoir Dogs, the Madonna, dick,
like
dick,
a virgin,
dick, and like and through to the conversation you just mentioned in the car, the famous, quarter pounder of cheese conversation in Pulp Fiction, or you go to the first 10 minutes of Inglourious Basterds with Hans Landa and the French farmer. It's just brilliant. That's what he does best, is that dialogue, I think. I don't think anybody, I think he's the best personally in cinema today, but we only get that in the first half. There's some really great writing for these characters in the first half of the film. Even for Stuntman Mike, he has some great lines and stuff in there in conversation. The second half's a car chase, basically.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why this film's a lesser work for him, in the sense that he's kind of robbed himself of his number one weapon. His best tool is his dialogue writing. And there's not a whole lot of it in the second half. There's a bit between when we meet the second group of victims, played by Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Tracy Thoms, and Zoe Bell. When we get to know them a little bit, and I like the fact that he spent some time on it, getting to know them and figuring out their dynamic together was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But it's not really the same. It's not quite the opportunity for great dialogue that he had earlier in the film. So it's kind of like, but, either you kind of need to pick one.
Yeah.
I think, either we don't spend a whole lot of time getting to know the people up front, and you save the good dialogue for the main characters, or the first people we meet who get the great dialogue are the main characters, It did feel we spent a lot of time, a lot of cool writing, getting to know a group of people who were just done, gone.
Because I kind of feel like they could have had very similar scenario, just smudging the two together, and just instead of having the Jungle Julia troupe being the ones who have slight interaction with Stuntman Mike, they could have just gone straight away with Rosario Dawson, Zoe Bell, and everyone, and just had the best of both worlds, because they delivered a fantastically creepy character in Stuntman Mike, greatly performed by Kurt Russell. But yeah, we spent a lot of time and a lot of character development and quality writing on these guys that bye-bye, you're gone. And then we suddenly get this next lot that it goes long periods of time before we get where it really wants to go. And I feel like if they had written the two across, that might have been the better option. But I'm not Tarantino.
No, fewer. The second half, again, having read his book, you can start to see the influences start to filter through here. He talks in his book a great depth about Bullet. You remember you and I watched Bullet a while ago, the Steve McQueen film with the famous, 15-minute car chase scene, which is
San Francisco quality.
Arguably the greatest car chase ever filmed. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that argument. Or Vanishing Point, which gets mentioned in this film, which I haven't seen. But I think that's what he's going for with the car chase. I think he wants to kind of recreate a small part of those car chases that he saw and loved when he was a young man going to the cinema. He is less successful on that front. I mean, he's not Donnie Yen, or I don't know who else directed those horrible Fast and Furious movies, but I don't even know, do they have car chases in those movies anymore, or are they all spaceships by now? I'm not sure.
It's about family, Travis. It's not about the cars.
So I got one good thing and one really bad thing to say about the second half of the film. The good thing is fucking Zoe Bell.
Yep.
Like if you don't know who Zoe Bell is, fair enough. She's not a particularly well-known actor because she's not an actor. She's a stunt woman. She was Uma Thurman's stunt double in Kill Bill. And I guess she got to know Quentin a little bit. And he wrote a fucking movie for her, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And she just plays herself now. She's a stunt woman playing a stunt woman named Zoe Bell.
Yep.
And she did all her own stunts in this film. They apparently offered to get her a stunt double. And she said, no, thank you. And so her stunt work in acting in this, I think, is top notch. Look, she's never going to win an Academy Award. It's not that kind of role, but it felt very natural to me.
It was adorable. There's like little poses that she was making as she was trying to debate with Kim about actually doing the mast. I think they called the maneuver or something like that. And it was very organic and natural. And considering she's primarily a stunt double, she was in dialogue-heavy scenes with Rosario Dawson and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, whose star just keeps on rising, and Rosario Dawson, who is one of the delights of modern cinema. She held her own pretty well.
You wouldn't know that she's not a trained actor like those ladies are. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I think, is the part that bothers me in the second half of this film. You get the impression that the four of them are pretty tight. So she's the movie star. That they're all, and Tracy and Zoe are stunt people. Quite get what Rosario does.
She's the makeup artist.
Makeup artist, that's right.
Yeah.
And so they've all got a day off, and hence they're all hanging out together when this shit goes down.
Yeah.
But to Zoe's desire for the day is to take for a test drive a American muscle car that someone's selling. And in order to convince him to let them drive the car by themselves without him, they leave their friend, Lee, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, as human collateral, as they put it. And the strong insinuation is that she's going to be molested by the guy
Mm-hmm.
who they're leaving.
And
Who is Jonathan Logren is the actor who
it's the
played
same guy. My name's Buck.
Buck,
Yeah.
Buck. So he's got a big career as playing, molesters, which is a horrible thing. But like, it just didn't gel for me at any point. Like, why would they do that to another woman and to their friend? It just didn't click in the sense we've got this idea of him as a little group of friends. Why would they leave her there to be basically molested by somebody, or at least potentially? You just wouldn't leave your friend alone like that with somebody. Not a creepy weird guy. This guy's playing creepy weird really well.
Yeah.
And so that bothered me because it didn't make sense. And just because it's a grindhouse film, does that mean? I mean, I guess it means they don't have to make sense, but it didn't make sense in a way that wasn't true to what they were trying to do. I think, if that makes any sense to people out there, it didn't go, oh, they're doing this because this is what they would do in a grindhouse film. It just didn't work for me.
It something that you don't really say about Tarantino movies. It felt like lazy writing.
It did, yeah. And we never find out about her again. She's never mentioned again. They don't talk about her again. Like, it's not like go back later and like find the guy and kill him or something. Which maybe that would have been grindhousey to add into the female revenge angle.
Yeah. Or they, even if they go back to collect her and she's killed him because he was trying to get on her and stuff like that. It's like, yep, no, that's all right. Sure. Okay. That's grindhousey enough. But no, they just left it. And I did like the final few minutes of Stuntman Mike's presentation. He gets shot and he becomes the one that they're sort of like hunting, and him just driving along crying, going, "I'm sorry, that was a joke." And he's just kind of breakdown of hard man, cool man to sniveling worm.
It's not an unsatisfying ending. It just, there are a lot of really good elements in the works. I mean, the acting is in the second half of the film is phenomenal. I would like to say the four ladies were brilliant. I just don't know that Mary Elizabeth Winstead was given a lot to do.
Yeah, she didn't really do much.
She kind of played an idiot, who was always a step behind the conversation, but she did that well. The other three were brilliant. Rosario Dawson, I don't think I've ever seen her make a bad film. She always does well. I mean, like, I have zero interest in what's going on with Star Wars right now, but I am tempted to watch the new Star Wars series, Ashoka, just because she's in it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't give them your money.
Well, I've already given them my money. They're already subscribed to Disney Plus, but and the others were fantastic. We talked about, not exactly a household name, but she's does fantastic work in this as well. So the acting's great. There are bits and pieces of good writing around the place. Kurt Russell is fucking Kurt Russell. Apparently they wanted John Jarrett for this, and I'm like, oh, okay. As much as I like John, he was great in Wolf Creek. It wouldn't have not have been as good. Kurt Russell's just got charisma, and he plays the evil character really well. So there's lots of good things going on. It just doesn't quite gel into a whole here. So that's the worst thing you've got to say about someone's film. It's not they're not exactly scraping, not Uwe Boll territory, but And we have to quickly mention the fake trailers. I think I mentioned it last week. There are at least 3 films I think now that have been made out of those fake trailers. Machete, he gets the girl. So I love the Machete trailer. It's so cool.
It's just delightful, dumb fun.
There is a potential. This could be a third one of those still coming. Apparently, Machete in Space, which I would be up for. I've got Thanksgiving is supposed to come out. Eli Roth is going to come out later this year, and I am sure there was one. Maybe it was a different version. There was one called Hobo with Shotgun, which actually was made into a film as well.
I don't think that was one of the trailers. I think that was like there was a competition or something, and someone made a trailer for it, and then Rutger Hauer ended up making the movie. I think it might have been produced by Rodriguez or something.
Maybe I'm wrong, but they all seem pretty cool. I would definitely watch Werewolf Women of the SS. That would be fucking cool.
Yes, same here. That was the Rob Zombie one, wasn't it?
And Rob, mate, you're not exactly overflowing with great ideas. You know, the Munsters wasn't exactly the hit. So yeah, and of course Nicolas Cage was in it as Fu Manchu. You couldn't do that now. But yeah, brilliant. I love the little trailers. They were a lot of fun.
They were highly entertaining, and I'm surprised that people haven't tried to kind of pull more of that kind of thing of fake trailers into other movies in some way, somehow. I do like the nods in both movies to the Rodriguez movies and to the Tarantino movies, just like name drops, and Michael Parks just kind of reprising his character from so many of the Tarantino movies. Well, so number one, we got ourselves a problem. It's just a great character that you're never going to get any backstory or anything like that for, but it's just he's fun to watch. Even in Tusk, Michael Parks is fun. I enjoy him.
Just to be clear, Hobo Shotgun was based on a Grindhouse cinema. Check the trivia of the film. So I don't know why it wasn't on Stan, and it wasn't on the version I watched either. But anyway, I used to be clear that they were great. One last mention for me: the soundtrack, especially fantastic. Planet Terror in particular they were gonna get John Carpenter. Oh, what an opportunity that would have been! But Robert Rodriguez did it instead, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, he did a really good job of just getting that kind of synthy sci-fi, like 70s, 80s idea of what futuristic soundtracks would sound like, and he captured it really well. I like it.
We would play some, but I literally got one of our episodes got a copyright strike on Facebook of all places because George hummed this theme to Suburban Commando for 5 seconds.
I did such a good job of copying it.
Literally, the copyright AI picked up you humming the theme to Suburban Commando, and now made that video have like the credit to whoever wrote that piece of shit song from like 30 years ago.
I love the fact that we now actually have a legitimate connection to Hulk Hogan, which is creepy.
It's not going to work for me, brother. Anyway, did you actually enjoy this? Just quickly, how did you feel about the 3-hour experience?
Planet Terror I enjoyed because it was like what, an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. I can't remember exactly the length of Planet Terror on its own. It was kind of a refreshing length for a movie, and it's like an hour and 45. I really liked that. I liked the fact that it knew what movie it wanted to be, and it just did that. I appreciate any movie that does that. Look at what we were talking about last week with Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. They knew what movie they wanted to make, and they delivered on that, and it served its purpose. Death Proof felt long, and I have a similar critique to it as I did with John Wick 4, where the action sequences, whilst good, just went on for too long. It was too long on some of the car chase sequences, and it's like, okay, yep, you're driving around dirty roads. Still, okay, can we move it on? I can see exactly why this didn't work as a single feature, and I remember an article with Robert Rodriguez saying, yeah, it was weird. Tarantino was able to split one movie and make people pay for it twice to see Kill Bill Part 1 and Part 2. And we gave them 2 movies for the price of 1, and they didn't like it. It was like, different kind of thing right there, but it's
maybe it wasn't. The 3-hour thing was just a bit too, just before its time.
Yeah, before its time. I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of thing does come around again, where we get to, or a couple of hotshot young directors come together and just go, oh yeah, you're doing really fun independent stuff over there. I'm doing really fun independent stuff over here. Let's do something together, and we'll do a 50-minute movie each, package it together, boom, done. I can see that happening again. I don't know who, I don't know how, but I get the feeling that it's something. If we get two indie directors like Tarantino and Rodriguez both started out as indie directors, and they have very much kept their independence to a certain degree, through creativity, through funding their own studio or whatever they did. They've still got more autonomy to create the movies that they want to make compared to a lot of other directors out there. I can see that kind of formula happening again. And I would imagine that people are kind of looking for it. Producers are probably looking for it. The idea is like, oh yeah, you know what? We're going to help shepherd these independent creators. We're going to introduce them and just see what magic happens.
Maybe for a limited series or something on a streaming service rather than at the cinema, though.
Yeah. I think
maybe a little bit long lines those of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, right?
Yeah, that sort of thing. That anthology style. Sort of like, okay, this is the umbrella world. You can tell your story. There'll be a little nod here or there, but it's not. We don't have to connect them. Nothing like that. I can see that happening.
Anyway, you have the keys.
Yes, I do, and I'm taking us somewhere that I have never been before. But considering his recent win of the Oscars, I'm following Rose McGowan to a movie that I've never watched, but it is directed by one of our more enjoyable directors, Henry Selick. Brendan Fraser in Monkey Bone.
I'm not familiar with this one.
Monkey Bone. Let me just tell everyone at home what Monkey Bone is. It's from 2001, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. It stars Brendan Fraser, Bridget Fonda, John Turturro. Who else is it? It's got Rose McGowan, Giancarlo Esposito in there. Whoopi Goldberg. And this is, in a coma, a cartoonist finds himself trapped within his own underground creation and must find a way to get back while racing against his popular but treacherous character, Monkey Bone.
Looks like it did well. Looks like it had a good reputation. It's got a 4.8 out of 10 on IMDb. Mm-hmm. So good to see you keeping the quality up.
Hey, I'm going for things that are a little different, a little unique. And this is definitely one of those.
It certainly does suck. Okay, that's for next week.
But come on, I'm giving you a few good options of where.
No, there's a good exit there. So good exit there.
And we've finally got Giancarlo Esposito on the chain. Come on,
Bob Odenkirk.
There you go. Yeah, see, you got plenty of places.
Oh no, there's no shortage of that. No shortage of that. I could take us back to Tarantino, but Henry Selick, of course, for a second, for those who don't know, he was the man who did. We dealt with him a little while ago. He was the director James and the Giant Peach.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he
and
was.
Coraline. So he's been thereabouts. I think we did The Nightmare Before Christmas as well as a chain movie.
Did.
So that could be.
He could arguably be our most.
I was going to say, haven't been keeping stats, but that's 4 entries in the chain in the last 3 years for Henry Selick, and inadvertently. So
yep, we did Nightmare Before Christmas straight after Coraline. Yeah,
there you go. So 4th entry for Henry Selick. Should we move on to the big release though this week?
Let's talk about Super Mario Brothers.
Now, this is the starring Bob Hoskins and John. Sorry, not that one. Have you noticed there's been this historical revisionism of that film over the past couple of weeks since this one's come out? Like
it always happens.
It wasn't that bad. And I'm like, yes, it was.
Yes, it was. You're trying to make your childhood more enjoyable in retrospect.
It was trash. Super Mario. I mean, like, do we need to explain what this is about? It's the story of the Super Mario Brothers on their journey through the Mushroom Kingdom. Of course, we have the authentic Italian Chris Pratt playing Mario's voice, Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach, Charlie Day as Luigi, Jack Black as Bowser, Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, Fred Armisen playing Cranky Kong. Have I missed anyone famous? Is it Charles Martinet who plays Mario's dad? Of course, he is
Mario.
The actual voice of Mario. Yeah.
But
it's nice they found space for him.
Yeah. It's got a plethora of additional voices in there that are, ironically, well, maybe not, considering they are nerdy voice actors sitting around playing Dungeons and Dragons. Critical Role, you've got Kari Payton as the Penguin King, and you've also got Ashley Birch does some voice work in that, and she played the character of Keg in campaign 2.
Did she voice that Tiny Tina? Was that
yes?
That Ashley, or was that a different Ashley?
Yes, and she also did. Oh God, Life is Strange. The Life is Strange video games. She was very instrumental in them.
So, I'm very curious to hear what you think about this. I think if there's one of us here that is. I've taken off the Tarantino fanboy hat, and I think it's time for you to put on the crown of Nintendo fanboyism. You've grown up with it. We've both grown up with this character. You've played a lot more Mario games than I have, and it is chock full of Easter eggs.
Every single scene, every single sound, every single piece of music, every reference. It is. I said it about painting to the edges with Planet Terror. They do that with this as well, for everything going back to, there's references to Jumpman, the fact that they've got Charles Martinet in there, the fact that it covers so much of the universe of Mario. You've got obviously there's Mario Kart and the Rainbow Road. You've got some of the original kind of the training montage that Mario has to go through. It's like, yep, that's basically every 2D side-scrolling Mario game that's ever come out. It's just everywhere, and it's wonderful. This is absolutely a children's movie. They are not trying to make anything. I would not even necessarily say that this is a family-friendly movie, because it is very much skewed to the younger audience. But even then, there's enough. If you're a fanboy, if you grew up living and loving this, there's so much there, and it kind of makes me want. Like, some people I've seen reviewers kind of saying, "Oh, it's disappointing because I just want to go and play Mario." So, like, yes, that's part of the design of this thing, is to push it. That's why Mario games are on sale on the Nintendo Switch at the moment. Product connections right there. But I kind of also get their point, because the Mushroom Kingdom looks fantastic, and going from one to another, I want a fully immersive Mario Kingdom 3D open world game, beautiful Unreal Engine 5 style, ray tracing, everything. Just make it. I want to play this movie because it just looks wonderful. And it captures the sense of the Mario that has been presented to us all this time. And it updates it a little bit to the modern age. For example, Princess Peach is not just your "help me, Mario." She's a warrior princess.
I want to take point of that. I've seen people say this. Super Mario 3, she was a playable character. And I'm not sure it's the second one, but she was definitely a playable one in the third one. And that is 1988. So for characterization, I've seen people go, "It's a woke film." Because they make Peach better. It's like, Peach was kicking shit out of Koopas and whatever you want to call them in the 80s. So they can get the fuck out.
Well, it's part of. I mean, there's a lot of people who kind of fly the flag for female representation in modern video games, like with Ashley Birch's character, bringing her up again, for can't remember the character's name, but in Horizon Zero Dawn, she's a strong woman there. You've got the character of Tomb Raider. You've got lots of other ones, but it's like Nintendo kind of did away with that sort of quite a while ago. Like Metroid, Samus Aran was this badass bounty hunter in this suit, and at the end of, I think it's the second game, you find out that it's a woman. It's like, yep, you're a badass. That's all that matters. It's fantastic. Peach being a playable character was a good, interesting nod and addition. But I do also kind of get their point to a certain degree, because it does feel a little bit like they are somewhat pandering to it, because they maybe they wouldn't feel like they wouldn't be able to release it if it was just damsel in distress, especially after success of things like Wonder Woman, and the amount of female superheroes that we've had, particularly in the Marvel universe, where they are strong, independent people. And I get that. I think they do it quite well here, personally. I think that she is an engaging, interesting character. I think that it makes sense that she's a fighter, because the Toads definitely can't fight. And I think it's an entertaining character, and it adds a little bit more to the relationship. The balancing act for what they do on this social level, I think, is when we get to the end. She does still need to be saved by Mario and Luigi, but it's not just her, and that's the kind of the payoff. It is, there are a couple of people that are in danger, and so it's not just princess in danger, damsel in distress scenario. It's she's there fighting along with everyone else, and it doesn't matter. I'd had no problem with kind of a woke nature of this movie or anything like that. I thought it was good. I liked Anya Taylor-Joy, and as Princess Peach, I thought she did a good job. I think actually all of the voice actors generally do a good job. They're not entirely what I was expecting, but I did like Chris Pine's voice as Mario. It wasn't
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt. Yes, sorry, it's the other Chris. No, the other one.
I don't share your obsession with Nintendo because I'm not a filthy casual. And I'm not 9 years old. Sorry. But
I am both of those.
Sorry, I had to get the dig in. It's I played the original, of course. I played the first 2 or 3 of these. I played 3 a lot, which is a very odd game. There's a funny story behind Super Mario 3. You can probably find it on YouTube. You should look into it. And I played a lot of Super Mario, Mario Kart on the Nintendo 64. I think that's probably the last Mario game I played. But I picked up a lot of the little eggs, Easter eggs, the Jumpman character, like the thing on the machine. I'm like, oh, I know what that is.
Princess is in another castle.
I think you are right that this is a film that has been made purely for children. I was in a cinema. I have not been in a cinema with that many kids since I was a kid, I think. And they all seemed very entertained since they were quiet throughout the film. And they didn't hear a lot of laughing or cheering, the occasional giggle and laugh here, but like I assume that quiet children are entertained children, and hence it did the job for them. This is made by Illumination, so I think those are the guys who do the Minion films and stuff like that. They are a B-grade animation house. They are not Pixar, and this film is very much wears the fact it's not Pixar on its sleeve, in the sense the writing is lame. Like, it doesn't even try to tell a story that would be remotely satisfying to anybody who's not a Mario super fan or 9. For me, I didn't hate this film. I was just bored. And like, I mean, I could see the references, like, I like some of them, like they drive off the side of a rainbow road to try and land on the other. Yeah, how many fucking times I tried to do that and I never pulled it off.
You had to reverse off the start line and then jump off on the left-hand side of the track, and then you just cut out the whole thing.
It's but that was little ones like that were nice, and but but it was such a lame, lazy story. It was like, well, they're really great animated films, like the Pixar film. I think of a film like Inside Out or Up. They have the surface story, which kids can love and laugh at and goof off at and have a great fucking time. But it's got this second layer of story in there for the adults and for the older kids out there to tell them a little bit about life or something important. Now, I don't necessarily expect Mario to be telling kids something important about life, but I expect a level of writing above a Saturday morning cartoon from the mid-'80s, which is what this kind of felt like.
There is not one single good, gripping story in Mario. In any Mario game.
I know, so that's not to stop them from actually writing one, right? I mean,
that is a fair point.
They've got professional writers. They went to school for this. You know, why can't you write an entertaining story?
They had the family drama. Father not respecting his son's wishes.
It doesn't. I'm not saying it needs to be these things. I'm just saying that's what separates this film from being a really, really good animated film from being bog standard, run of the mill Saturday morning cartoon stuff. That's all it is basically Saturday morning cartoon fare. It's lazy tropes and hackneyed stereotypes of a kind of story you'd expect to see. And I'm not saying this is all fine if you go into this and have your kids entertained. Your kids will enjoy this. They will be entertained. Oh, yeah. They'll shut the hell up for an hour and a half and they'll have a good time and they'll probably keep talking about it for a long time afterwards. And like you said, they'll want to go home and probably play Mario on their Switch. And there's nothing wrong with that. Except do not try and piss on my leg and tell me it's raining and tell me this is a great movie. It's not a great movie. It's a solid kids movie. It does not qualify to carry the bags of most of the great animated content that comes out. We are in the golden age of animated film right now, or the back end of it.
If Disney has their way, it'll be dead before you know it.
I had the trailer for Elemental before the movie when I saw it. I don't know, it's playing everywhere.
Yeah.
And watch a trailer of Elemental, you're like, now that looks like a good movie that I actually want to go and see. And it's going to be a story. It's going to have, again, that 2-level thing that they've been doing so well since Toy Story. So look, that's not to say you can't just tell a straight ahead story like they have here, but the bar has been raised on this kind of thing. There's absolutely no reason why you can't make a film now that is good for both your audience, your kid audience, and your older audience. It doesn't make parents want to poke their eyes out with spoons.
And this is a very good point. And I think we're very quickly approaching that tipping point for Nintendo movies already. After 2 successful movies, you've got Detective Pikachu and you've got this. Financially, both very successful. Story-wise, very, very shallow. Nintendo are in danger of, if they do it a third time with another one of their properties, just bring out another movie and really aim it for kids, they're going to damage their brand with the older generation for movies. They're going to be Nintendo's for kids. And that is a trope that Nintendo has had for decades on their consoles. They are the kids' console, and then eventually you upgrade to PlayStation and Xbox because that's where the mature games are. Slightly different environment there because the games are... It depends on how good the game is and how good it feels to play the game, but there is still that very, very obvious divide of age gap. I think what Nintendo needs to do to be able to stay an all audiences brand in the cinema, like they would probably actually really like to be in the video game space, they need to create something that is a bit more mature. I'm thinking if they were able to bring to the screen either Metroid or Legend of Zelda, and if they got like the guys that created Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, if they went, here you go, here's Legend of Zelda, make something. They're really good at having that Saturday cartoon kids thing, but with really good emotional overarching story.
I think the idea here is if you're going to go out into another property, Zelda is the obvious choice. I think Metroid's the other one. Now, I've never played any of the Metroid games, but I did play the first Zelda game back in the 1860s. But then correct me if I'm wrong, there are some decent stories available in the Zelda universe you can pick from, right? Ocarina of Time, arguably one of the greatest games ever made. I'm assuming the story's part of it, not just the gameplay.
Mhm.
So there's no excuse next time
Mm.
to make Saturday Morning Direct. I think maybe I'm being unfair comparing it to Pixar. Pixar is or was the creme de la creme.
Mhm.
Maybe a better comparison is the Lego Movie. Same thing again. Who thought the Lego Movie was going to be any good? It was
Yeah.
fucking great, and I
It's
bet
true.
kids loved it, and it was fun. And
Mhm.
this film is so by the numbers. It was like it could have been written by an AI program. That's how lame this story is. I'm just and
That's, you've just created somewhere. Chat AI has just started writing its first feature film.
it wouldn't surprise me. It just wouldn't surprise me. Like I'm being hard on it here. Like I said,
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. I was like, it was there. It was inoffensive. It was gone.
It was
I
vapid.
think Chris Pratt was a waste of time. Why they spent money on Chris Pratt? It could have been anybody they could have got to do it because it didn't even sound like Chris Pratt. Like, people like go, I will only see an animated film with a big star is voicing the characters. Mario's the star in this. It could have got anybody to have done it. Same with Anya Taylor-Joy. She doesn't have a particularly noticeable voice, unique or voice or sound. The two call-outs I'll say, Jack Black, Bowser, amazing choice.
Peaches, 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 peaches.
And then people are talking about the song winning like Oscar, and I'm like, oh god, I hope you're not serious.
No,
and Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong was an excellent choice. He was fantastic as well. He has a very noticeable voice, very unique voice. You go straight away, oh, that's Seth Rogen.
Yeah, I enjoyed Charlie Day as Luigi. I thought he had a suitable amount of panic to his voice that it brought Luigi to life for me in a way beyond sort of like Mario. There was a little bit more to him, which was kind of nice. And Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, very synthesized voice, but it was annoying and charming at the same time, and they made sure not to give him too much to talk about so that it didn't outstay its welcome. Because it could very easily have just been way too much straight away.
What did you make of it? I want to. We're getting long on time. I want to.
Yeah.
I don't. But what did you think of the 2D gaming sequences? You talked about them earlier. I thought they were ridiculous.
I liked them as a fan, but as a movie, it's like, okay.
Do I need gameplay in my movies?
No, but that was the thing. They kind of they pulled this trick in Super Mario Odyssey, where there's this great introduction to New Donk City, one of the levels, and it's kind of set in a pseudo New York. And the opening is essentially you're running through the history of Mario, going from basically from Jumpman all the way through to modern age, and it is done fantastically. It feels great playing it and looking at it, and it's a genuine celebration. And you've got that sort of like swing song playing, so like jump up, and it just feels cool, and there's this energy to it. Doing it in this movie, it didn't have that. It didn't have the same charm. It didn't have the same energy, and maybe that's the difference between playing and watching. But I don't know. It didn't quite hit for me. I got an idea of what they were trying to do, but it just didn't quite work.
The good news story for this film for me is it goes to show, back to my prediction from 2015, the value of why I think video game films are going to be so valuable going into the future. Superhero films are one type of film, right? They're superhero films, right? That's really, we've seen Marvel fiddle around the edges of what you can do with a superhero film. But look at this. This is a video game film. This is a fucking pure kids film. Same with Detective Pikachu. Comedy kids films. We could look at a TV show like The Last of Us, which is a super intense horror drama. We're going to see Fallout soon. What the fuck they're going to do with that? A post-apocalyptic drama of some kind. It's such a broad genre. The wealth of material and stories and built-in fan bases, which is what they love.
Oh yeah.
They love a brand now. It's just sitting there waiting for someone to come in and grab it. And it's such a giant school of different types of stories you can tell.
It's really interesting with the sort of like the success of Super Mario Brothers, and for people like Jack Black and others are saying, yeah, I want to see a Red Dead movie or TV shows. I'm like, yep, sign me up. I'd be down for that.
Western. There you go, Western. Nah,
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know who Jack Black would be in that, by the way. I mean, I don't see an obvious selection for someone of Jack Black.
He's done serious roles before.
No,
King
but
Kong.
like, he's sure as hell wouldn't want him as John Marsden or any of the protagonists. He's too old. But it occurred to me, it's like this genre, these properties, just even the properties we're talking about there. We can have Detective Pikachu, Mario, Link, or the Legend of Zelda. What do you want to call it? The Legend of Zelda presents a great opportunity to tell a story that will appeal to a much older and more complex audience. And it's just Nintendo's properties.
Yeah.
So I will stop now because I've made my point for 10 years on ago. And let's move on from something decidedly mediocre to something that is equally mediocre. And that is the Boston Strangler on Disney Plus or Hulu, I believe, in the US.
Now, let's get this straight away off the bat. This is probably the most shake and bake mass murderer, serial killer, movie by the numbers movie that I've seen in a very long time. The color palette is ripped straight from Zodiac.
It's got a real Zodiac vibe to it.
Yeah, and even the, sort of like some of the kind of newsroom reporters scenes and things like that, they've almost got like a weird flair of Mindhunter to them, and there's a lot of David Fincher light about the presentation of this movie.
And let me just make one quick point here. This is written and directed by a bloke named Matt Ruskin. He is not David Fincher.
No, he is not.
To be clear, so the plot summary: Loretta McLaughlin was the reporter who first connected the murders and broke the story of a Boston Strangler. She and Gene Cole challenged the sexism of the early 1960s report on the city's most notorious serial killer. So I think this film's trying to do a couple of things. I think it's trying to sort of relive some of the fun and excitement of a film like Zodiac, which was also about sort of a newspaper reporter investigating a serial killer and becoming obsessed. And also trying to sort of tell a story about women pushing back against sexism and getting the job done, which is actually the most interesting part of the story for me in some ways, because I knew a little about the Boston Strangler. I knew they caught him. I didn't know there was so much doubt about whether the person they caught was the murderer or not. That was interesting. But I had no idea that the actual crimes were brought to light by a female reporter in the 60s. And that's quite a remarkable story at the time. Yeah. And had they focused more maybe on that and less on the Zodiac elements, it would have felt less derivative.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They focused probably more on the Zodiac angle. And gosh, I mean, what happened to Keira Knightley? She once point in time, she was the next big thing. And like, what was the last Keira Knightley film you saw before this? Probably the last Pirates film she was in.
Well, we saw her in Never Let Me Go,
but that's chronologically, that's 2010.
Jeez, 2014, The Imitation Game.
I think that was the one I saw her most recently in.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. Oh no, she was very briefly in Dead Men Tell No Tales,
which I didn't see, but yeah. So it's interesting. She has her career has stalled.
Yeah,
and now she's doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's very safe for her. I think she's just her physique is very fitting for that 60s housewife look. So it's period. It fits in with the period, but it's also very much a Keira Knightley kind of thing to try and push beyond that. I'm a pretty woman in an oppressive world. That's kind of what she seems to like to put her teeth into. But it just feels so paint by numbers. You've got Chris Cooper in there as well, he's
playing Chris Cooper.
Yeah, he's an Academy Award winner from a couple of years ago. Keira Knightley has won an Oscar. I know she was nominated.
She was nominated. I don't think she actually
Yeah.
won. By the way, a couple of years ago for Chris Cooper, I'm pretty sure that was adaptation. And I think that was like 20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, jeez.
A couple years. Kira has been nominated for 2 Oscars, I think. Actually, one might have been. And just wait and see what they were.
Oh, Nina Karenina, I think.
Anna Karenina.
Anna Karenina.
No, she was nominated for Pride and Prejudice in 2006 and The Imitation Game in 2015.
Huh.
So,
okay.
Yeah, you're right. So, but Chris, fairness, I don't think Chris stretches out too much these days. He's just got a pretty good job just playing Chris Cooper. But also, it's surprising to see David Dastmalchian pop up in here as well, playing a very David Dastmalchian type role.
I was going to say, is it really surprising?
In the sense that he's kind of thought his career was going places now a little bit with his DC roles. Interesting to see him pop up in this kind of Drek. Look, I said Drek. This film is perfectly cromulent. It's not particularly exciting or interesting. It's a good time, hour 52. And kind of the reason I picked it was we were going to watch something a lot more interesting. But Grindhouse was a long movie. And I know George had a busy weekend. So I thought I'd try and make it as easy as possible on him and myself by picking something that was fairly easy to access in this is on Disney Plus and streaming, so I thought that would make it a little easier. But my goodness, it was just so. 5 minutes after I finished watching it, I forgot I watched it.
That's definitely its biggest sin. Like I've mentioned it for Grindhouse and for Super Mario of painting to the edges. This is barely using any color. Literally, it's a very muted color palette for production value, but it never kind of fully invests into any of the could be interesting things. Like the Boston Strangler is a name of a serial killer that I know. I don't know much about it, but they don't go full tilt into that and make it deep and dark and scary like Seven or something like that, where they would kind of relish in the horror of it. They don't go as deep into the social element of women's rights and liberation as they could, which is the more interesting story in my opinion. And at the same time, they don't really settle on anything, and therefore kind of very lackluster. And it's like, oh yeah, that happened. I forgot about that. Oh yeah, that was another thing that happened. And it's also very mundane.
Predictable too. Like we're watching it and like Michelle will be like, oh, I hope that doesn't happen. And like 30 seconds later that happens. And you're like, it's like you're really telegraphing your punches here. Like it's just full of tropes. It reminds you of better. Halfway through, I was like, I wish I was watching Zodiac because that's a much, much better film than this one. So look, if you're a big Keira Knightley fan, if you're particularly interested in the story of a Boston Strangler, and it's an interesting part because that is actually an interesting story. It is not your stereotypical serial killer story just due to that twist at the end. But Albert DeSalvo was not going to be convicted, but he confessed to being the killer. But there seems to be reasonable doubt to some degree whether he was or was not the only one committing these crimes. And looks like he committed some of them. Did he commit all of them? Was it a group of people? Like that's kind of an interesting story, but they did not very successfully tell it here. But if you're very interested in the story, maybe take a look. It's an inoffensive hour 52.
Yeah.
I mean, like if it's not 2.5 hours, it's fine. But as you said, it's shake and bake, paint by numbers, doing nothing particularly original. You've seen this film before.
Yeah. It's very safe in what it tries to do, and in that it kind of fails. So it didn't put anything on the line. It didn't lose anything, didn't gain anything. Yeah.
Binge browse.
Burn. All right.
We were going to have a look at Beef. Did you have a chance to look at any of that?
Haven't yet. Like you said,
I
I've had a very busy week.
had a busy week. You know, your tour of Southern Australia, you know, it did take priority.
I did not have a pie floater this time.
George was attending his favourite sport in Adelaide over the weekend.
Yes.
Chess. Chess boxing, right? No, chess.
Nope, this was basketball.
Basketball. I thought it was. Anyway, that was the other trip. There's so many sports.
It's too many.
Beef, I checked out the first episode last night, and I'm going to put this squarely in the binge category. So here's something for you to look forward to. Beef is a short, limited series. It's available now on Netflix. Starring Stephen Ewan and Ali Wong. Stephen Ewan, of course, probably best known for The Walking Dead, but also the Academy Award nominated film about the Minari, a Korean farmer comes to America. That was the
Didn't
worst.
he also do the voice of Invincible?
Not sure. Anyway, the other star in Beef is Ali Wong. He does do Mark Grayson in Invincible. Invincible. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's it.
Ali Wong, he's stand-up comic. Also, I talked about her a couple of months ago. She was in Always Be My Maybe. She was in Birds of Prey.
Yeah, she was.
It's very easy to forget what happened in that film because it was a deeply forgettable film. Two people that are road rages and burrow into their minds and slowly consume their every thought and action. This is very cynical, very, very dark, and I'm all about that. So we meet Stephen Ewan plays Danny, Ali Wong plays Amy. We meet them having a road rage incident in the car park of a hardware store, which turns into a chase through the suburban streets near the hardware store, and neither of them can forget it. The opening scene of this show involves Danny Cho at this hardware store attempting to return a pile of hibachi grills and a carbon monoxide detector. Now, I don't know how many people out there know what you might do with that combination of goods, but it's not good. I want to be a responsible broadcaster and not join the dots for everybody, but just think about that. That is the opening scene. It's dark, it's cynical, it's sarcastic. One episode in only, but but the writing is really fantastic. They're written by created by a guy named Lee Sung Jin, who is not a super well-known name, but he's done some interesting work around the place, including on Silicon Valley. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I haven't seen his other TV series, but I think this might be the start of something beautiful for him because this is looking particularly good.
Okay. Good to know. What have I been watching? Let me just quickly go through some of my things here. Wait a minute. Someone's been using my... I'm looking at my thing previously watched. And like, I didn't watch that. That's very disturbing. I'm worried. I haven't bothered going back to Mandalorian Season 3. Just that is very heavily in the burn because the latest episode apparently has got Jack Black and Lizzo in it. And it's like, okay, that is... Why are they doing stunt casting? I don't like it. And just stop, please. please, for all our sakes.
It's like when they had Stacey Abrams turn up on Star Trek as like the Federation president or something like that.
Yeah, it's why? Just why? I was mildly tempted to go and try out the new series of Picard, but then I thought, why? So I didn't.
They had 2 chances. They fucked them up.
Yeah. Honestly, I haven't had much chance to really do anything new. One of the things that I did go back to for recently is talked about it before, The Legend of Korra. And it's one of the reasons why I mentioned the creators of that doing Legend of Zelda, because when you look at Avatar: The Last Airbender and you look at The Legend of Korra, like the Harry Potter books, the first book 1, book 2, and book 3 of The Legend of Aang, it grows with the audience as they're watching it, and they introduce more mature content as it goes on and much more emotional depth. And then years later, they brought out Legend of Korra, which is a follow-on story years after the end of the first one, and that too, it's sort of like, no, the people that grew up on Aang, they're going to want to watch this, and they have gotten older. They know who their audience is, and they aim for it, and they do it now. And it's great writing. They have subtlety of world building. They have the interesting characters that have growth in the story. They're not the same painted character from beginning to end. They change, they evolve. Particularly the character of Korra. Won't give it away for anyone, but the evolution that she has throughout, personal evolution, is great. And it's really well told story. That, for anyone who is interested, it's a lot of content, so I keep it in the browse section, but it is, if you've got the time and the investment, it is binge worthy because it is just great storytelling across a generation. It's great. Top quality stuff.
Interesting. And how are you watching this?
That is The Legend of Korra is on Netflix. I think it is.
I have a rare entry in the burn category. And this I gave 15 minutes before.
Okay.
That is Rabbit Hole.
Was that the Kiefer Sutherland one?
New Kiefer Sutherland series. It is streaming in Australia on Paramount Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck knows how you watch it overseas. I know if Paramount Plus exists overseas, but I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. John Muir, a private essay on the preservation of democracy in a world constantly at odds. A noticeably puffy Kiefer Sutherland appears to be playing a very similar character to his character in 24, which I never really watched a lot of. I couldn't get into it, and this kind of explains why. It's hackneyed, cliched, dull, full of tropes, and 15 minutes of this cringe-worthy dreck and depressingly puffy Kiefer Sutherland was all I could stand. I'm sorry. It went straight into the burn. Now, I should note it has a 7.6 on IMDb. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But not. If you're a big fan of 24, maybe this is the looking for, but no thank you.
I remember I really enjoyed 24, and when they went back for season 2, and then I think they ended up with 4 or 5 seasons of that show, they never managed to recapture the energy of the first season. It was a high concept thing, the idea of the clock ticking constantly and ticking down. That was a great concept, but at the same time, it's that famous line from John McClane. How can this same shit happen to the same guy twice? That's what it always felt like with 24, which is a shame because Kiefer Sutherland really found something to dig his teeth into and do a really good, compelling performance for. He was really worthy of praise that he got for that one.
To be clear, there were 8 seasons.
Oh, dang. Okay. All right. That's that ouch. That's a lot of punishment for anyone who watches it, never mind those who actually yeah, anyway. um yeah, I don't have anything else to talk about right now because I've just been knee deep in basketball.
Very well. Then I think we can tie a bow around this one.
Yeah, look at that. Just over
So,
one
we
third.
don't always have time to bring you new content, people. If the people from the TV stations would like to start sending us codes and streaming DVDs and stuff so we can talk about their
Yes, please.
show to our millions and millions of viewers, listeners, we'll be happy to. But until that's what we can find time for.
But it is life back to normal now, so I will definitely have a few things because there are a couple of shows that are very much on my radar, Beef being one of them, as well as a couple of other options that I've been wanting to sit down and experience. So I will be able to fulfill plenty of binge, browse, burn.
Back with vengeance next week.
But for today, that is the end of our show. We talked about our chain movie of the week, which was Grindhouse. I have picked Monkey Bone as our connector, with Rose McGowan being the connection between those two. We talked about the Super Mario Brothers movie and the Boston Strangler. We had a good binge nomination for episode 1 of Beef, as well as my retro browse/binge for Legend of Aang and the Korra. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It has been the talent, Mr. Travis Croft, right there, as always, bringing the intelligence to the show. Me bringing whatever I bring. But thank you very much. Good night.